Welcome back to the VSSW. We are moving into the third session of the day, which is entitled Engineering and Education. This session is sponsored by TEC, and TEC is a diversified natural resource company who are a great contributor to the Elk Valley community and to the avalanche safety world. We're going to see a short video by TEC.
At TEC, innovation isn't a buzzword or blue sky notion of what the world might look like someday, maybe. Here, innovation is what we do every day, by putting ideas to work. Ideas like using the sun to power our operations. Finding new ways to protect watersheds. And employing artificial intelligence that can detect equipment failures before they happen. Ideas like using augmented reality to better understand every phase of our mine development. And deploying dozers remotely to keep people out of unsafe areas. The type of thinking that employs drones to help inspect sites more safely and more efficiently. Smart shovels to determine valuable ore from waste rock. And data-driven everything to make sure we can see even the smallest details of our operation and work to make things better. At TEC, we invent, we collaborate, we partner, and we improve. This is where ideas come to work every single day.
So to introduce this session and bring the speakers in on cue is Mark Vesely. Mark is a longtime resident of Fernie and has held a number of roles in the community at the Fernie Ski Hill as well as Island Lake Lodge. He currently works for 6 Point Engineering, and Mark also teaches professional level avalanche courses. Mark, it's over to you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, James, and thanks again to our sponsor, TEC. Welcome to the second series of presentations. We're titled Education Engineering. Continues to be a beautiful day here in Fernie, and I hope it's the same wherever you're tuning in from. Again, we have a great lineup of speakers this afternoon, and I look forward to hearing from them and seeing their cases. If there is anything that's constant in the career of avalanche practitioners, it's definitely lifelong learning. I recently read a book about the engineering of the Kamano-Kitimat transmission line. This was a project that started in the 1950s, and it required continued adjustments and repairs until quite recently. And this was due to the severe avalanche hazard environment that's part of the BC Coast Mountain Range. Outside of the specific events within the story, really what it's about was adjustments in a complex environment where creativity and taking risks to try and solve an incredibly complex problem were the nature of the story. Many of the challenges that they were faced required first time, never tried before tactics. And it was definitely made for quite a story. It resonated with many of the experiences that I have seen and observed where fellow practitioners have worked through a full variety of different contexts where snow avalanches are affected by affect their different projects and operations. In this story, were they successful? I would say that each attempt was successful for a time, but this is certainly the nature of the work that we're involved in. It seems diligence is required through progression, through cycles of failure. It's inherent in our business. If I asked you to reflect on your careers, I am certain that almost everyone in this conference would have an experience of observing avalanches adjusting what actually happens from what you had planned for. Learning from experience and adjusting accordingly to our future practices and ideas, they're critical parts of solving problems that include avalanche risk management pieces. From the design of infrastructure to the systems that support real-time decision-making, creativity, deliberate reflection, and adjustment through feedback loops allow our work to evolve and progress. We have 3 presentations this afternoon that will allow us all to learn and progress from their experiences. I'm certain you will enjoy all of them. James had introduced our sponsor once again. We'll take another moment just to say thank you to Tech. And now I will introduce our first speaker of this afternoon. I'm very pleased to introduce Suzanne Whalen. She is the head of monitoring solutions at GeoPrevent. It's a firm specializing in alarm and monitoring systems for natural hazards based in Zurich, Switzerland. Suzanne holds a Master's of Science in Climate Sciences from ETH Zurich, and also has a postgraduate diploma in Risk, Disaster, and Resilience from UCL London. After several years in research and development and applications in the field of measurement technology, Suzanne's focus at GeoPrevent is the interface between natural hazard management and customized technical monitoring solutions. Suzanne has lived all over the world with some very memorable times noted in New Zealand and Nepal. She does love to spend time outdoors and enjoys the craft of beer brewing. Suzanne will be presenting a case study on the autonomous multi-station avalanche detection system based on long-range radar technology for road safety at Bear Pass in British Columbia. I will let Suzanne fill you in on the details, but it sounds like this technology greatly assisted the BC MOTI in achieving their objectives of winter seasonal highway safety, as well as minimizing road closures for the Bear Pass. So without further ado, here is Suzanne.
Hello. Hello, everyone, and thank you for having me. Hello from Switzerland, where it's already dark and almost the end of the day. The project I'm going to talk about is a particularly exciting one. We've developed and installed a number of avalanche radar systems all over the world, but this one is rather special in terms of location remoteness, the number of avalanches, and the rather challenging weather conditions. I'd like to say thank you to all the project partners that contributed to the success of this project. And here we go. Brent.
Hello everyone. I'm going to present you the automatic avalanche detection system at Bear Pass we developed for the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure, MOTI. Here we are in northern BC, close to the border to Alaska. Highway 37A connects the coastal towns of Stewart and Hyder, Alaska, via the scenic Bear Pass Road with Terrace. Stewart is the northernmost year-round ice-free port of Canada and is strategically important for goods export. The area is characterized by challenging weather conditions and frequent winter storms and is hence highly avalanche-prone. 72 active avalanche tracks, shown in red here, are located along Bear Pass Road. Spontaneous avalanches and avalanche control work often affect the highway during winter. On average, the road is closed about 88 hours per season, but up to 336 hours in snowy winters. So the aim of the automatic avalanche detection system is to improve avalanche forecasts, increase road safety, and decrease highway closure. But first of all, why do we use radar? Well, one main reason is that radar works in any weather, at day and night, so in fog, rain and snowfall, and these are the weather conditions when avalanches often occur. Our avalanche radar systems consist of long-range wide-angle Doppler radars that further allow for real-time measurements, which is important for road closures, and can cover large areas at safe distance. So we can cover several avalanche tracks at once, and there's no need to install instrumentation in the hazard zone. Here are the two regions of interest and the according radar locations, and on the right-hand side is a list of the requirements, or at least some of them. First of all, there is no power available. There's little sunshine for solar panels. Actually, the George Copper site is in the shade of the mountain for several months. There's no communication available. There's no mobile phone network, and both stations have no direct line of sight to Stewart. Then the area sees up to 3.5 meters of snow or even more, and is characterized by harsh weather conditions. Plus, the sites can only be accessed by helicopter. For communication, we set up a radio link station on Mount Johnson. Both radar stations communicate via Mount Johnson with the MOTI office in Stewart, where we have an internet connection. Data transmission and remote system monitoring by us takes place via two different communication channels for redundancy reasons. Now, station design was quite challenging considering the list of requirements I've shown you before. For reliable autonomous operation, we use a combination of fuel cell technology and solar panels. The solar panels supply the station with electricity in good weather, whereas the fuel cell takes over the rest, which is in this case a considerable amount of time. We developed an energy-efficient concept and built in according components. The design is robust in terms of wind and snow load, low temperatures and vibration that could cause interferences with the radar measurements. We also integrated conduits to manage inlet and exhaust air for the fuel cell, as well as the generated water. And then we installed the system in not very pleasant weather conditions last year in November. It was pretty wet with temperatures around the freezing level. But our installation team did a fantastic job and managed to get everything up and running within the few good weather windows they had. And this is what the radar stations look like. This is the one at George Copper. On top of the mast, we can see the Avalanche radar with the anti-snow system. The anti-snow system takes care of a snow-free radar head and ensures that the radar can detect events reliably even during snowstorms. Below we see the high-resolution camera for regular status images and automatically triggered event images. Then there is the wall of solar panels that work in combination with the fuel cell, which is located in the control cabinet together with the tanks. And we also see the chimney for air supply and exhaust air in the middle of the picture, and the radio devices for communication with Mount Johnson on the top left. And this is the Little Bear station, which looks very similar, only with small adjustments because of the site orientation. And this is probably one of the few pictures where the installation team could actually see the mountain behind them because the weather was so poor. Let's look at some data. Here is a detection example of a helicopter triggered event at the beginning of this year at George Copper. This slide shows the Geoproment online data portal where all the detection data and images are uploaded to from the Stewart office. Authorized users can access all data via PC, tablet or smartphone at any time. Plus, each avalanche detection triggers a post-event text message for those who wish to receive a lot of text messages. On the left-hand side, we can see a list of events, and on the right-hand side, we can see the details of a selected event, such as the time, duration, front speed, size, as well as a series of event images. And here is this event image in full size. And here is an example of little bears, and I think this is actually one of the few examples we have with good visibility. Again, on the left-hand side, the detection event list, and on the right-hand side, the details. And here is the detected event in full size. Talking of visibility, we've done some statistics for the past season and looked at visibility conditions at the time of avalanche detection, among others. In total, the system detected 385 events at Little Bears, and as you can see, most of them in the dark or in poor visibility conditions. So only 2% or 6 events actually occurred in good visibility. And this also clearly shows that radar is definitely the right choice. We also analyzed the avalanche tracks and the frequency the avalanches occurred in these tracks. This is an example for Little Bears. We also compiled these information in an infographic that can be downloaded from our homepage very soon if you're interested. And these are the numbers for George Copper, where the system detected the record number of 722 events in the first season. But we need to mention here that there is a hanging glacier in one of the tracks, and ice falls from this hanging glacier produce a good share of the events. But again, almost 90% of the events occurred in bad weather or in the dark, and it would be very difficult without radar to reliably detect these events. And this is the avalanche track image for the George Copper site. The track named George Copper is the previously mentioned one beneath the hanging glacier that accounts for more than 50% of all events. Concluding, the system has been running autonomously for almost a year now, and it hasn't even been necessary to change the methanol tanks yet. Also, the system has proved robust and reliable and did not require a major intervention on site. According to the avalanche forecasting team, the system provides them with important additional information such as avalanche location, event time, and event images that assist in assessing the current avalanche situation and better understand regional avalanche conditions. The data further allows to verify forecasts and improve their accuracy. In terms of highway closure, a significant reduction of more than 40% was achieved despite above average snowfall past winter. The road was closed for 39 hours only, whereas more than half of the time was needed to clear a 500-meter stretch of road that was buried by a very large avalanche. Future plans include traffic lights and gates at the road sections at risk and system extension for immediate road closure and reopening if the avalanche did not reach the road. This is it from my part. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Suzanne. That was a great presentation. A reminder, we'll put things out to questions now. Please use your raise your hand function, and you'll be put into queue, and then as it goes through the order, our technician will connect you with our speaker, and we can get some questions. Do we have any questions so far?
Yes, we have a question from the floor from Zach Keskinen. Go ahead, Zach.
Hello, Suzanne. Thank you for that presentation. I was wondering, is this synthetic aperture radar that you're using? I didn't see any movement. So is there a reason why you wouldn't use SAR for this application? Yeah.
So this is a Doppler radar I mentioned in the beginning.
Ah, okay. Thank you. And then I was also wondering, what have you had any issues with false alarms from heavy snowfall or anything like that?
Not with heavy snowfall, but with rain fronts coming in from the different angle than an avalanche would. But at Little Bears, I think 1 in 385, and at George Copper, a few, 5 maybe, but very few. And we can, well, this is what we're working on right now to improve our algorithms to detect false alarms of this case. But it's sometimes difficult if we have very similar looking rain fronts coming in.
But you said you only had a few false alarms for the entire season?
Yeah.
Cool, awesome, thank you.
Do we have any other questions, Brent?
Yes, we have a couple more here in the queue. The next one is from Marika Fiducia. Go ahead, Marika.
Hi. Yeah, so I was just wondering, is the cameras on the station, is that going continuously, or does that get triggered when the radar detects something, and that's how you've gotten those pictures of the avalanche events?
Both. So first of all, the camera takes automatically pictures at certain times of the day. So as soon as it gets bright, it takes the first picture, and then every hour approximately. And plus it's triggered by the radar. So it usually sleeps to save energy. But if the radar detects something interesting, then it triggers the camera, turns it on, and then it takes automatic pictures.
Very cool. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes, we have a couple more questions. The next question comes from Bill Nally. Go ahead, Bill. Oh, pardon me. Bill just dropped out, so I can't unmute you, Bill. Oh, Bill, you're back. Please quit clicking your buttons. Go ahead, Bill, you're up. You will have to unmute yourself, Bill.
There we go. Hi, Suzanne. I have a question about the resolution of the radar, specifically how much detail you can see as to where the avalanche started. So you can clearly see in your images that a certain path, it released from a certain path, but can you tell what part of the path? What's the resolution like?
Well, resolution, we can tune it. So usually in the first season, we set the sensitivity of the radar very sensitive, because we don't want to miss any events. And then as we go and as we analyze the data of the season, then we define how we want to set the resolution. Well, I can't give you a number like 10 by 10 meters or something. That's usually not needed in avalanches, but more rockfall. But we can set it very sensitively if it's needed. Yeah. And we can tell the different tracks. Well, it depends how far away we are. Here we are in about 2.5 to 3 kilometers. But yeah, we can tell the tracks, the different tracks.
Thank you.
Okay, Suzanne, I have a couple of questions from the chat box that I may put out your way. The first one is from Donald, and it asks, what data is used to calculate your size category?
Yeah, that's not very accurate. So that's not the international scale. It doesn't necessarily correspond to the scale. So the radar detects the size of the avalanche and then categorizes it. So this is, it pretty much takes the shape of the avalanche and then it categorizes it. But that's not necessarily comparable with the international scale, because we're in different, depends on the distance we're at.
Thank you. And a second question from George. He's asking cost per unit.
I knew that was coming. Well, there is no standard Avalanche radar system or installation. They're all customized. All our systems are customized. And I can't give you a number here. It really, the range is huge. So it depends on the distance, first of all. So we have systems that reach 5 kilometers or targets in 5 kilometers, and then autonomous systems are usually more expensive than if we have power available. So it goes from 100,000 to 300,000 per unit, or cheaper. It really depends what the conditions are.
Great, thank you. As most things in our work go, I think that's the right answer. It all depends. Brent, do we have any other questions in the queue?
Yeah, we got a couple more questions in the queue here. We have one from Tim Johnson. Go ahead, Tim.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, I'm wondering, I'm looking at kind of a similar system here in Jasper National Park, where we don't have any cell coverage, and it's a fairly remote site. Different to Bear Pass is our paths are quite small, and I'm wondering is there like a minimum size for these radars, rather than like a maximum size like you get in Bear Pass?
Well, again, it all depends. It depends how far away we are. The closer we are, the better the resolution, but the smaller area we can cover. So we would have to look at it in detail. So just get in touch with us.
Perfect. Thank you.
We're happy to help.
We have time for one more question there, and it's from Manuel Bertrand. Go ahead, Manuel. Hello, Manuel. You may have unmute your mic there, Manuel. It looks like you are unmuted, but we're hearing nothing. So I'm going to move to the next question from Zach Keskinen. Go ahead, Zach.
Oh, sorry, I just clicked the wrong button.
Okay, no problem, Zach. We'll try Manuel one more time if you want to try and ask your question there. Looks like we're not hearing from Manuel. We have no more questions from the floor.
Okay. Well, I will take a moment to say thank you, Suzanne. It's a really amazing case history. Actually, I think it's an amazing opportunity to actually have a chance to see the environment through a way that technology can support visuals of what is actually going on. I was quite taken by the statistic of how much activity was actually happening in the dark or through periods where the weather was bad. And oftentimes in our work, we're left guessing through those periods, and then we get to see the aftermath. And I'd say in general, I feel like I underestimate the scale of things. So that part of your technology is it's very interesting to me. It's very good. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I will take a moment now to introduce our next speaker. But before I do, I'm just going to note, many of you may have noted a change in the lineup of speakers in our program today. Giga Metafashishvili of Mountain Resort Solutions based in Georgia could not be with us today due to some personal circumstances. We would like to say thank you to him for his time in preparing for our conference and wish him all the best. We hope to see his presentation at another time in the future. But with the last minute adjustments of our program, we would like to say thank you to Jerry Johnson for stepping up to present on very short notice. Jerry is a professor in political science at Montana State University. He has a specialty in public lands policy. He's a part-time fly fishing guide also in Alaska, and a happy grandfather of 3. Jerry will be presenting today on rethinking the heuristic traps paradigm in avalanche education. As we know, a lot of these subjects and research that discusses heuristics and the traps affiliated with them, they're fundamental for our awareness and monitoring factors that influence our decision making every day. And so it's with great interest and curiosity that I introduce Jerry Johnson.
Thank you. Got me?
Got your mic, and we're just waiting for the presentation.
All right. And you've got my presentation up?
Not yet.
Okay.
You're good to go, Jerry.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I do apologize in advance. This is a little rough. I got this call on Friday and got back to a computer this morning. So this has been a bit of a rush, but we did just recently publish this paper. I have up there the my co-authors on this and affiliations, and I want to thank them for all the hard work. This paper's only been out about a month. It's a lot of fun to write because it did give us a chance to revisit the heuristics or the heuristic traps, or what I'm going to refer to as basically the facets paradigm. And I don't think that needs much introduction to this group. This is work that was done by Ian McCammon in the early 2000s. Little over 700 accident reports that he pulled together and tried to look at some patterns and look at the failures of the decision shortcuts or these heuristics. And just as kind of a review, you'll remember that these of the different ways of thinking about making decisions, heuristics is one of them. It's a way to reduce the cost of making a decision. It pulls on our knowledge, skills, and abilities, but it also pulls on the limitations of our time and expertise. And most of the time, these shortcuts work very, very well until they don't. And that's what I think McCammon was trying to understand. Let me be clear what we're saying in this paper. The heuristics or the facets paradigm has a lot of it makes a lot of intuitive sense. McCammon in his original papers, which we should all go back and read once in a while, is very clear about what he's saying and what he's not saying. He's not explaining all avalanche accidents. He's not explaining all of our decisions in the backcountry. He is looking at fundamental failures of decision in the very, very few cases of fatal accidents. And that gets lost. And I think one of the reasons for writing this paper and rethinking this idea was that it has not only been lost, but it's been a bit misunderstood or misappropriated within our I'm hearing somebody else.
Sorry, Jerry. We had a bad pusher.
Okay. Here's the problem. There's a lot of weaknesses in both the approach to studying accidents and in the way the facets, the study of facets is kind of unfolded. All right. And so as I said, we are misapplying some of what McCammon is trying to teach us. But we also have a very poor understanding of the facets themselves. So here's just a couple examples. One is what we can call the sample bias. Accidents happen to a very, very small number of us in the backcountry. It's not a sample in terms of what we would like to do in terms of scientific sampling, probability sampling. These are what's called convenience samples. And in the case of accidents, they're a very narrow group, even within that convenience sample. So to take the lessons from accidents and try to generalize them to the larger population and our general decision-making in our decision-making processes in general is just bad science. It's not going to result in good findings and good avalanche education. Another example, and the full list of what I'm talking about here is in our paper, and we do have a poster that's up now. The accidents are compressed over time. So this body of accidents that he was looking at was about a 30-year time period, all in the United States. So you might reasonably ask, what has changed over that 30 years? Well, not only has the number of people in the backcountry that are practicing these sports increased, but the technology has changed. The education has changed. All sorts of things have changed. And the analysis of looking at the entire body of accidents doesn't take that into account. It can't take that into account because we're treating them all alike. My personal opinion is that the nature of accidents has changed from just in fundamental causes, positions of ignorance or lack of education, lack of information, to what I call accidents of choice, where in spite of what we know is going on in the snowpack, in spite of what we know is going on in the weather, some people choose to ski that slope anyway. That is not based on ignorance, that's based on choice. So in order to really do a better job of understanding the nature and causes of these accidents, we really need to break accidents into various segments, or what you can think of as ensembles of accidents. And so in the paper we discuss that, and we discuss some of the ways that we might look at that. The third one is a little bit more problematic to me and really goes to the heart of what I want to leave you with today. And that is, what are these facets? Sorry, I do have their convenience sample, and I think we've talked about that. If we're going to do good science, we have to have a good handle on our variables. In social science in particular, we call that operationalizing our variables. What is it exactly we're trying to measure? So one of the heuristic traps that we're all familiar with is this familiarity trap. Our past actions guide our behavior in a familiar setting. Well, I don't know what familiar means in that statement. Do I have to visit a slope a certain number of times in order to be familiar with it? What is familiar with it? Is it the underlying terrain under the snowpack? Is it the snowpack conditions? Is it the weather pattern? It's clearly all those things. Who's familiar? We often conflate the individual within a group and that charismatic individual that he talks about and the group decision. In fact, there's no such thing as a group decision. There's individuals that make up that group, but each of them come to a decision on their own terms, and then perhaps they discuss that. So I'm a little bit concerned when we talk about familiarity that we don't really have a good definition of it. And here I just have a short list of how we might think about familiar. Is it a slope, a run, a region, a peak, a drainage? Is it time on slope, numbers of time on slope? When were we on the slope? Is it the attributes of the slope? In this case, is it something that's easily accessible? Is it out there in the social media? Is it in a guidebook? what's our experience with that slope? In other words, we can ski that slope multiple times, but do we have different experiences with different people or different events on that slope? Is it the last time we visited, or the next time we visited, or the last storm cycle? So it can be a function of many things. And the reason I bring this out is because each of the definitions, each of the terms in the heuristics that are discussed are very, very poorly defined. And if we're going to do good social science, we need to have good definitions, and we don't. So what do? One of the really cool things about this ISSW group, and unique in the other areas that I've worked in my career, is that there's a lot of citizen science. There's a lot of people out in the field doing some really good questions and some really good projects, and you see them in the posters and the papers at ISSWs. It's not perfect. So what can we do to help move this process along, to get a better understanding of the heuristics, the heuristic traps, the facets paradigm, to operationalize these and to move what I think is sort of a stuck paradigm forward? What we're doing at the MSU Snow and Avalanche Lab is we're launching a human factors research page. And so what I'm doing currently is building a set of web pages that help citizen scientists in the ISSW world move from idea, conceptualization, to research question, to literature review, sampling, surveys, and analysis. The bias is on surveys. That's in part what I do. That seems to be what a lot of people want to do. So that's where the emphasis is being placed. All of the examples are using examples from past ISSW papers. So as we immerse ourselves in this project, the examples that we're drawing on are examples of our peers, our citizen science peers. Another feature of this that I think will help move the operationalization of these variables along is we're going to have a question bank. This question bank is obviously voluntary. We can't compel anyone to use questions or our methods, but we can put it out there to help people so that we don't have to continually reinvent the wheel. So if you think about standard demographic questions or practitioner questions, there's multiple ways of looking at experience, at abilities, at education. And what we're going to do is we're going to present several ways of doing that so that you can pick and choose among it from that question bank to build your survey. This is meant to be a collaborative process. This is meant to be open. We haven't quite got the details of that worked out, but the idea is that as people do more surveys, we can upload those. As they have successes, we can build on those. As they have problems, maybe we can take a look at those. The idea is to simply help people who want to move the human factors research forward and do that in a fairly logical and low cost way. So here's where we're going with this. The facets paradigm has encouraged us to, it's framed our language, and it's framed this language around failure, when in fact, you heard from Jordi this morning, our tracks indicate that most people don't fail. Most people are not having avalanche accidents. So why are we not shifting that paradigm towards in another direction? All right. I think that it is holding us back in terms of productive research. We need to define these terms. We need to define what an expert is, what a familiarity is. These various facets are simply too vague to be useful to do good science-based avalanche education. And so what we're hoping is by launching this human factors research page, by launching the question bank, that we can get more collaborative, a more collaborative working relationship with people around the world who are interested in these questions. If we can start to use some of the similar metrics, we can start to do some meta-analysis, because we can never do good scientific sampling of the backcountry ski and snowmobiling community. But by working together around a framework such as this, maybe we can make some progress and produce some more science-based avalanche education. Thank you.
There I go. Okay. Apologies for that. My microphone was a bit sticky. Thanks very much for that, Jerry. Again, we will put it out to you now if anyone has questions. Our preferred method is, again, use your hand up function. You'll be added into the queue, and our technician can connect you with our speaker. Brent, do we have any questions?
Yes, we have a question from the floor from Pascal Hagley, please. Go ahead, Pascal.
Hi, Jerry. It's Pascal here from
Hey, Pascal, how you doing?
University. Good. I wanted to ask you, like, on one side, I think I'm totally on board with you that I think it's important to sort of bring up the quality of surveys that we do. My concern is a little bit that the heuristic traps, these are really sort of emotional responses that are very much context dependent. And I wonder whether surveys are the right tools to study those kind of events. Like, to me, it seems like people will never sort of respond the same way when you ask them, either in an intercept survey or in an online survey. Do you have any thoughts around sort of those types of challenges, and whether there will be other tools that are used in the social sciences that might be more suitable to research these kind of things?
Yeah, that's a great question. My personal feeling is that, that they're probably not the right tools, but surveys are accessible to citizen scientists. We can do a survey on a simple question, and someone can be successful and produce a successful project driven by their data needs. So something at work, something that they see while they're teaching education classes or something like that. Personally, I think moving away from the heuristics traps is probably going in the long run going to be more productive than staying stuck in that paradigm. You've done some work in this area. We've done some work in this area. This is clearly not a failure of decisions per se. It's an emotional, as you say, it's an emotional trap. And controlling our emotions, or learning how to control our emotions, is not going to be done on a survey. But this is a place to start. We all know that doing more qualitative work maybe gives us a richer understanding, but it's really, really hard to do. There's very few of us that are very good at it. And so I wanted to start small, wanted to start simple, looking at the literature in the ISSW papers. There's a lot of surveys. Many of them, mine included, can use improvement. So this was a place to start. Hopefully over some next period of time, other methods will be added to this, and we can move the research agenda forward.
Thanks, Jerry. Yeah, I just wanted to highlight to the audience here that social sciences are much more than just surveys, and that it's really key to basically find the right tool for those questions. And I think some of these questions that we have about these sort of emotionally charged decisions and when they happen and under what circumstances, those are some really challenging research questions. And picking the right tool to address this is going to be key to make a big difference. So I just want to make sure everybody sort of understands that.
No,
but thank you for your efforts.
Yep.
Thanks for the question. Do we have others?
Yes, we have actually one question from the chat box that just so we can get that answered from you, Jerry, is the acronym FACETS. What does that stand for? We have a couple people asking that.
Google is your friend. In the process of losing, I'm sure Pascal probably has this off the top of his head. I don't. In the process of losing my webcam today, I also lost my notes page. So go Googleize facets, do some reading, bring yourself up to speed.
Excellent. Thank you, Jerry. And
so how's that for a cop-out? Pretty good.
No, that's great. We've actually posted a web link to the human factors facets in the chat box for you folks. We also have another question from the floor from Wolfgang Baer. If he would like to ask his question, go ahead, Wolfgang.
Hi, Jerry. It's Wolfgang from Munich. I have a question. The accidents of choice. My feeling is you're right. Is there any research? Is there any evidence, empirical evidence of that has changed?
Well, I think if you qualitatively, if you read accident reports from, let's just say 10 years ago to more contemporary, it seems as though, and let me just say this, I hope someday someone will do the work that McCammon did in assimilating and compiling that huge accident database and analyzing it. I can only say that looking at it, you know, in a qualitative way, the stories of these tragedies seem to be different. They're not stories of ignorance. They're stories where people said, for whatever reason, social cues, showing off, media coverage, Twitter hits, they made a choice to do something that they probably knew was not wise. I'm only basing that on reading them.
Okay.
And I wish someone would go in and test that hypothesis.
Good. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Wolfgang. Any other questions, Brent?
We have no more questions from the floor.
Okay. I've got a note here just in the chat box from Rupert saying forecasting a continuum of environmental threats, facets in the audience. All right, well, with that, thank you very much, Jerry. We are 23 minutes after the hour. So what we're going to do is take a very short break. We'll just have a fill-in slide here. Everyone can refresh their coffees or get a water or whatever you else need to do. And we will reconvene with our next speaker at, I think we will be 1:30, is that correct? Okay, very good. So we will see you then. Enjoy your break. Thanks for tuning in. All right, we're at the half hour here, so welcome back to VSSW 2020 Fernie. I would like to now introduce our final speaker of this afternoon's oral session, Liz Riggs-Meador. Liz is a director of recreational programs at the American Institute of Avalanche Research and Education. As an acronym, it's AIARE. She holds a master's in education from the University of Washington. Her work responsibilities include all aspects related to the development and delivery of AIARE's recreational education programs, including curriculum development, instructor training, and overall program growth and evaluation. Liz resides in Seattle, where she feels fortunate to have access to both the ocean and the mountain environment for recreating. She's a busy mom with a 6-year-old and enjoys gardening and cooking in her time at home. In another life, Liz worked as a design engineer for large commercial aircraft and brings lessons from this approach to her solving problems in her current career. So again, with great interest, I'll now hand the floor over to Liz. Welcome.
Thanks, Mark. Could you let me know, am I sharing my slides or my notes?
Notes.
I have a sense that's not giving me.
Still notes. We might have to just flip your screen on. There we go. Now PowerPoint in work mode.
All right. Are we seeing the presentation?
We're good.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone, and hello from sunny Seattle. I'm going to open by talking a little bit about AIRE, the American Institute for Avalanche Research and Education, since that name has come up a couple times in sessions here. So AIRE is a US-based nonprofit with a mission to save lives through avalanche education. We produce recreational avalanche curriculum, train professionals to teach that curriculum, and provide oversight and support for over 100 entities delivering AIRE avalanche courses. We also run professional avalanche courses, but today I'll focus solely on our recreational curriculum. So today I'm going to talk about the foundational tool of our current curriculum, which is the AIRE Risk Management Framework. The AIRE framework is a step-by-step backcountry risk management process made of daily and seasonal routines and key agreements meant to foster consensus among a backcountry team. This framework stands on the shoulders of decades of prior avalanche industry research and development about hazard assessment, risk management, and education, including over 20 years of focused work here at AIRE. The AIRE framework illustrates a routine backcountry travelers can use to reduce their risk, both while preparing and planning and when assessing and traveling in or near avalanche terrain. It uses a hazard and risk factors checklist to help prioritize and apply important information offered by an avalanche forecast or other sources. And it uses actionable prompts and reflective questions to guide the process, promoting active conversations and situational awareness. By helping to manage human behavior and reduce the potential for the adverse effect of cognitive errors and bias, our belief is that the end result is risk reduction. For this talk, I would like to start by describing the drivers of our current iteration and in effect define our design problem. I will then highlight key components of the process we built and detail one of these components as an example to illustrate the layered nature of this process. Finally, I'll end by discussing areas where we're still refining and propose ideas for further exploration. So before the AIRE framework, our curriculum centered around a concept map paired with a collection of checklists and tools called the AIRE decision-making framework. The checklists were primarily topical. This was important because it helped learners organize information, but after a decade of feedback from hundreds of instructors who taught tens of thousands of students, we realized people struggled with how to apply that knowledge. The most frequent feedback was along the lines of, I feel like I know more, but I still don't quite know what to do. So the solution to our design problem was apparent. We needed to help our students develop a risk management process, not just feed them well-organized information. So around 2012, the technical and executive leadership of AARI dove into a multi-year research and design effort to update our entire recreational curriculum by focusing on a repeatable, reliable, and robust process built around the following design criteria. It needed to be action-focused, providing clear guidance on what to do. The steps need to be simple enough to become a routine so it is consistently repeated when an instructor is no longer present. It also needs to be universal. While most risk management processes are united in common core components, our experience was that the work of making it look immediately relevant needed to be done by us, the designers, and not the end user. The steps needed to be recognizably relevant, regardless of how often the user goes into the backcountry, the mode by which they travel, or the availability of local advisories. The routine also needs to be scalable, usable immediately by a novice, but nuanced and layered with enough depth so that it grows with the user's body of experience. Finally, because users have a finite and brief time with an instructor, this routine also needs to facilitate lifelong learning. This was an opportunity to embed a learning process that draws from modern learning theories into the risk management routine itself. The AARI staff began our research and development efforts by comparing our design criteria against existing tools. While there are great examples of both decision support tools and Avalanche education models, no one existing framework served all our needs. We looked to current work in the social sciences to learn more about better supporting decision processes. Influential works included a Swiss insurance white paper about group interactions in high-risk environments, Atul Gawande's checklist manifesto, Jonah Lair's How We Decide, and Daniel Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow, among many others. On the risk management front, we looked to thought leaders such as the International Standards Organization, which in 2009 developed the ISO 31000, defining modern risk management standards. We also drew from aviation and military resources, particularly from the concepts of crew resource management and highly reliable organizations. As we developed these ideas, we vetted them with experts from around the globe as well as our own education committee. And the result of those efforts, led principally by Colin Zacharias, Ben Pritchett, and Tom Murphy, led to this new framework. The framework employs 4 easy-to-remember stages of risk management process: prepare each season, and a daily routine of plan your trip, ride safely, and debrief the day. In addition, teamwork guidelines define a group's rules of engagement, effectively binding the risk management process into a social contract. These easy to remember stages are aimed at increasing accessibility and clarity, so users are building on a repeatable routine from the very beginning. Our curriculum is organized around this process, making it both a tool and a curricular outline. This helps ensure that all the content that is taught has clear relevance, which is an important tenet of adult education. Students learn not just about a process, but also practice using it several times on a course, making it more likely to be a routine accurately repeated after the course. So to highlight a few components of this actionable, universal, and scalable process, I'll start with prepare. This big picture category stands alone from the rest of the process and includes 4 routines that enable backcountry users to be more efficient and effective in the daily routine. Listing practice avalanche rescue as a routine reminds users to keep their perishable skills sharp. Continue your avalanche education reinforces a commitment to lifelong learning. It is a feature of all of our courses. At the end of each course, students identify their next concrete educational step. The routines of prepare are also meant to engage users in lifelong learning. An example is the routine of tracking the season's conditions. Students learn to monitor important weather, snowpack, and avalanche events throughout the season. Building this habit helps novices and experts alike develop better avalanche pattern recognition skills. And this also exercises the application of skills and knowledge, not just when going out, but also throughout the season. With the routine of investigating trip options, students are identifying not only places they want to go, but more importantly, categorizing those places by appropriateness for various partners and conditions. The first step in the daily routine is to plan. Most recreational courses include a review of the backcountry avalanche forecast and use a hazard checklist that includes weather, snowpack, avalanche factors, and the danger trend and rating. Similarly, Plan Your Trip is a checklist that ensures these factors are considered. The update is that each item of the checklist is an action, so there is no ambiguity about the task to be completed at each step. This aids in the universality of the tool by removing the cognitive guesswork and simply giving students actions to take. This also ensures the process is accurately replicated from the very beginning. Additionally, each item is an embedded learning process by drawing from instructional techniques that prompt students to not only recall, but to also elaborate on hazard information. A specific example is rather than just observing current and forecast weather, students are prompted to discuss how the weather can affect travel or hazard. The higher ordered prompt helps illuminate what the group doesn't or does understand. So while a group could easily identify that it will be windy, being unable to describe how it affects travel or hazard demonstrates a gap in understanding. The items of the plan checklist prompt groups to preview the day's terrain options and then design a plan to limit exposure. So rather than simply naming route options the group believes achieves this goal, the prompts encourage an additional review by applying the current avalanche problem to their proposed options. This is to identify prior to departure where the group could be exposed and to specifically name the terrain they plan to avoid. For the next step in the daily routine, we redesigned our field checklist into a cyclic process designed to be used at key junctures rather than a series of prompts to be considered throughout the day. Experience suggests that individual desire and habit drives movement through the terrain. So pre-planning these junctures and employing a structure for discussion in which the group considers conditions, the consequence of an avalanche and the terrain ahead of them, and how they will move through it can be a way to counter this habit of continuous movement. The premise is that a group check-in and reevaluation that is repeatable and easy to remember, employed at critical junctures, can make a difference. As with the other components of the framework, each step here is an action to complete rather than general prompts to consider throughout the day. The debrief is a rich opportunity to turn an end of the day review into a learning experience, even if everything went according to plan. It engages in a metacognitive procedure that helps illuminate to students what they understand and don't understand. Reflection on this gap can help serve as a counter to the wicked learning environment of the backcountry, where something going right or wrong isn't neatly linked to the actions of the day. We find students in an instructional setting are always keen to debrief and improve, and our desire is to provide them with concrete steps to meaningfully engage in this process in a way they can continue after the course. The first step is to summarize conditions as a group. And from our experience in operations, we know that we interpret what we see differently. We need a check and balance step to ensure both perception and understanding is occurring. Otherwise, we repeat our errors. The second step is to review decisions. This crucial step translates the events of the day into a building block of lifelong learning. The group compares what they expected to happen to what they observed happen, be that with conditions, the group and decisions they made, or the terrain encountered. But more importantly than the compare and contrast is to try to identify why the group was correct or incorrect in their expectations. And this is the key in countering a reliance on mistakes or errors to provide the only opportunity for learning. So using this information, the group can then identify how to improve the actions to be taken next time. The 4 agreements of teamwork are guidelines to the daily process of plan, ride safely, and debrief, which become essential rules of engagement for group decision-making. These rules of engagement are one crucial element that distinguish the area framework from a simple hazard factors checklist. The social contract makes it clear. If folks can't adhere to them, they should not go out as a group. Our experience, even on courses, is that too often groups rely on the person they perceive to have the most experience. The 4 prompts are based on operational protocols and specifically phrased to promote drawing from a diversity of experience by encouraging expression of individual opinions, working together, and requiring consensus. These guidelines bind the risk management process into a social contract that respects a veto, and this veto acts as a fail-safe. Like a nested Russian doll, the framework reveals layers of detail designed to grow from a basic bullet list to support novice learning through regular usage by advanced backcountry travelers. The first tier is an actionable checklist with easy to interpret graphic icons that illustrate the repeating nature of the routine. The ARI Field Book, a weatherproof guide meant to be carried daily in the field, provides supporting actionable prompts to guide the learner through each step. Let's take a look at the ride safely element as an example. The graphics can be used as a quick reminder of the steps, like a sticker on something you can see all the time. The next layer, inside the field book, provides the specific criteria, sometimes called red flags, that should prompt an alert to the group about critical observations. As a more detailed repository of information, students can use the Avalanche and observation reference, also a part of the field book, to support the application of the right observations for a given avalanche problem. A final layer is the curriculum that is organized around this risk management process. Additional depth is supported through instruction on 2 levels of courses, plus course support resources that include a reference manual and website that can be used before, during, and after a course. The seasonal routines combined with the 3 daily checklists of the ARI framework encourage improved individual and group decision-making. It is designed to maintain awareness of hazards throughout the day, promote risk reduction strategies, and illustrate communication challenges. Our theory of change is that when backcountry users employ the ARI framework, the group makes better decisions. With this iteration of our curriculum, we sought to create an actionable risk management process that is simple enough to become an easy to repeat routine, but it was also layered enough to scale with increasing experience. The actionable prompts define a clear step-by-step process and prompt discussion and reflection, no matter the mode of travel or resources and information available. The prompts also promote elaboration and analysis, intended to support turning each backcountry outing into a learning experience. So in the near-term future, we are focused on refinements in usability and instruction. Our intention is that the ARI framework becomes a second nature routine used every time a backcountry user goes out. And it takes more than a few days of a course or 2 to develop this. The goal is to create a cultural shift. We have opportunities to survey large sample sets each year to understand what aspects of the process help or hinder this goal. We currently support the use of the framework with a weatherproof field book called the Backcountry Decision Making Guide, which contains references for the process in addition to template pages to be used daily in the backcountry. Our field book is supported by a reference manual and a website. There are significant opportunities to collect data and iterate on designing the best support tools to convert this process into a daily backcountry habit. High quality instruction comes from instructors that know how to connect to and craft an educational experience for a specific audience. As an industry, I think we're only on the cusp of creating a curriculum that is inclusive of everyone who is in or interested in going into the backcountry. We continue to focus on how we better understand and connect to our audiences in order to be more effective as instructors. And we are able to translate this understanding through our instructor development program. Other challenges include those that stem out of trying to go against popular culture and norms. And this includes selling the reality that conservative terrain choice is sometimes the only answer. I think we have a lot we can learn and incorporate from successful public health initiatives. I'm sure our current global pandemic will provide many more opportunities from which to learn. The ARI framework is the result of an evolution of a risk management process into an actionable risk management and learning process that is both universal and scalable to experience. It is a process of daily and seasonal routines guided by tenets for achieving consensus. We will continue to evolve the framework and improve our educational techniques and support tools. I present our risk management process here to invite input from the global avalanche education community and spur further conversation about incorporating operational risk management processes, modern learning theories, and instructional practices into avalanche education. We look forward to continued collaboration across countries and industries to improve how recreational travelers are able to manage their risk in a winter backcountry environment. I would like to end by recognizing all the individuals that have contributed to developing this risk management process over the past 7 years. And I would especially like to acknowledge Colin Zacharias, Ben Pritchett, and Margaret Wheeler for their invaluable help in preparing this talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. That was awesome. Once again, we will open up the floor to questions. So using your hand up function is the best way in. And again, you'll be lined up in queue, and I'll hand over to Brent. Do we have any questions?
We currently have no questions from the floor.
No questions from the floor. I guess one thing that kind of resonated with me after seeing your presentation here, in my career, I've certainly had opportunities to work in different frameworks that are designed to support decision making. And certainly the Avalanche environment has been noted as potentially a wicked environment where if something goes wrong, it can go horribly wrong. Another industry or another context, I suppose, I've seen with a similar volatility was like heavy industry where people are working on massive machines. And if something goes wrong, it's usually catastrophic. So it was very interesting to me to work in that environment where the structures that they gave us were almost rule-based in how to approach the problems. And a lot of that was based similarly to what you're showing, where there's lessons to be learned from experiences. So I guess it's more of a comment than a question, just to acknowledge that it's a very interesting framework to see, and a comment to our listeners. I certainly encourage everyone to examine the frameworks that you have in your workplaces that support your decisions. And if there's pieces missing or things to be learned from examples like this, I would certainly encourage everyone to take those. So thank you, Liz.
Thanks, Mark.
Sounds like we've got a couple of questions here from our chat. I'm just going to get the first one up here. Oh, sorry. I'll hand the floor to Olivia. Okay, sounds like we had a microphone problem there. I will intervene here. Monstis asks, what is the understanding and acceptance of using a field book for level 1 recreationists, as well as their use after the course?
That's a really good question. That's definitely the next question we have. So there is been some work, that name is going to leave me. Oh, Mikey Bell, I believe he was in Oregon, did some research on field book usage after the course, specifically the AIR field book. And then I know there's some more research out of Fort Lewis College in Colorado, just seeing what the usage is afterwards. So that's definitely kind of next on our radar, is understanding, do people use it? And then that helps inform what can we do. Maybe it's not a field book. I know women will empathize with this, but those books don't fit in any pockets that are put on a jacket or pants made for women. So I would much prefer if that were in a phone or maybe in a smaller field book. So I think there's opportunities to understand physically what that thing is, that in order for people to use that as a prompt. And then there's also another question around understanding recording of information before, during, and after, and how that supports the use of this process. So we're excited to have a process to put forward, and I think there's lots of opportunities to understand both its efficacy as a process and what we can do from a tools and instruction standpoint to support the use of that process.
Thank you. Another question in the chat box. Melis says, do you encourage and mentor Recreational 1 students in submitting their observations to forecast centers?
We do, and hi Melis. That's actually in the current iteration of the field book. In the debrief part, one of the last prompts just becomes submit observations. And so from a curricular standpoint, we are trying to reinforce that sharing of information. So borrowing from that operational piece of sharing that information with others, sharing that information with forecast centers. And so, for example, I'm here in the Northwest, and so we have a close relationship with the Northwest Avalanche Center, and we work with their forecasters to help develop language around coaching Northwest users on submitting observations. And similarly, we are trying to work with other Avalanche centers throughout the West to, like, how do you interact with that website and make observations that are most useful. So we're trying to create that cultural shift as well as of information sharing from recreational users.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely growing a culture. One last comment here from Nigel encourages our viewership here to read Snow Sense. Sounds like it's a good resource for us.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to go down a bit more here to one more. Okay. From Jess, says, great model for learning. Thank you for the presentation. Building on the question from the field book, does AIARE have anything on the radar for creating an app instead of a field book? This question is sparked from being able to track the season's conditions and perhaps being able to make a model from the app based on the recorder's observations.
So I hear two questions in there. I can answer the first one about the app, and that, yes, that is something that we have talked about. I believe Duncan Lee also works with AIRE, and the panel sort of made AIRE perhaps seem bigger than it was. And that, yes, we do have a lot of instructional staff, but as a core nonprofit, we're actually quite small. So if there are any app developers out there that are very interested in working with an educational organization, as you all know, usually there's a gap between what a nonprofit can afford and what the going rate of good technical expertise is. So if anyone is interested in helping us close that gap, we would love to work with you. On the other piece, I think there's, well, maybe now I'm going to make up this question. It was sort of about adapting to how people use it. I know that there's a real strong interest from general users in using that app to share data. And that's for database reasons, I don't fully understand, like a bigger technical lift. And our interest with the app has been primarily with just providing people an easy to use prompt. So that might be going to analog and just making lots of stickers that people put on everything. But we really want to make that content there that's available. And I think once we have that in place, that can help us understand or build things that enable sharing of information or even tracking of information. Again, if there's someone that works for Strava or any of those tracking companies, it could be interesting, but I know that our primary focus right now is on supporting people making that a routine. So it's actually a much simpler lift than the crowdsourcing of like huge data sets. I hope that answered the question. I think I dodged it pretty well.
No, I think so. That hopefully helps to form positive culture and keeps people safe. So thank you very much. So that's it. I'm going to take a moment to just close our afternoon session. I would like to say A big thank you again to our sponsor this afternoon of Tech Resources Limited, and also a huge thank you to all of our speakers for their time and dedication to bringing us excellent presentations for this afternoon. In the interest of the cycle of learning, I definitely encourage everyone to reflect on your own operations and see how your designs of how things are set up, how that affects and supports your abilities to meet all of your objectives and do your work as safely and high of performance as possible. With that, I will pass over to James Floyer, and he will take us into the last part of today. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much, Mark, and a great many thanks to all the speakers from this last session. We've been trying hard to start and finish sessions on time to facilitate people joining for specific sessions. It seems as though for the most part, we're doing fairly well, and I really appreciate the attention to the detail from the moderators and from the speakers themselves. Do feel free to let us know if there's anything we're missing. The comments field, the comments box will be open for a little bit longer. You can also get in touch with us through some of the VSSW emails. You should find that information on the VSSW 2020 website. Now, don't go away. Up next, we have the poster session, and to explain how to get the most out of the posters and how the interactive sessions with the poster authors is going to work, we've got our posters chair, Simon Horton. Simon, over to you.
Thank you, James. And welcome everyone to the first poster review. By now, I hope everyone has had the chance to browse the posters website where we have 46 different posters available. It's been my pleasure to coordinate these presentations and get caught up on all the exciting work being done around the world. I'm going to spend 5 minutes right now briefly explaining how these poster sessions will run and some of the main themes in this year's presentations. You can browse the posters on the VSSW website where they're sorted into 6 main themes. The 46 posters cover a wide range of topics from many different countries. These posters really cover multiple topics, so please take your time when you browse around to make sure you don't miss anything. You can start browsing by clicking on one of the themes. This brings you to a list of posters, and you can click a poster title to open that poster's page, which looks something like this. To view the actual poster, you click the red button to open it in your browser. Most presenters have also set up virtual meetings where you can ask them questions or join a discussion. These meetings are not hosted on our site, but on external platforms chosen by the presenter. Presenters have set up meetings on Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Google Meet, and a few other platforms. Hopefully you're familiar with most of these platforms, but if not, you may need to follow a few basic steps to get it set up on your computer. You typically get instructions by following the links. Presenters have also indicated which of the sessions they'll be available for beneath the meeting button, along with any other details you might need to connect. Note many of the European presenters will only be available tomorrow morning. Overall, 23 presenters have indicated that they'll be available today, another 27 tomorrow, and a few have opted not to have virtual meetings. So over the next hour and a half, feel free to browse this website and hop in and out of different meetings. To help you get started, I'm going to quickly cover some of the topics covered in these posters. The Education and Human Behaviors theme has 10 posters. About half of them are on education, including new programs in Eastern Europe and Arizona, increasing the inclusion for sledders, and practical tools for assessing slope angles. The human behavior posters cover many interesting topics, such as heuristics, differences between how we perceive safety versus danger, confidence in our perceptions of risk, conceptual clarity, understanding danger across different spatial scales, and also an interesting discussion about the cultural histories of avalanches. The forecasting theme has 5 posters. Most of them are on computer-assisted forecasting methods, which seems to be a topic of growing interest. These posters approach this problem with a variety of different methods and types of data. The other posters in this theme focus on technologies to help forecasters interpret and visualize their data. We have 5 posters on instrumentation. A few of them are on avalanche detection with satellites, which also seems to be an exciting new development in recent years, as well as a poster on remote avalanche detection in Russia. There's also a poster on glide slab detection with time-lapse photography, and albedo measurements with drones. The rescue and case studies theme has 7 posters. There's a few on structured approaches to avalanche rescue and medical treatment, and then several posters investigating accident statistics, including studies from New Zealand, the Alps, the Pyrenees, and roof avalanches in the US. Snowpack properties is the biggest theme with 13 posters. There's a few posters on fracture mechanics from both a theoretical perspective and studies on snowpack tests. A few posters on snowpack properties such as albedo, elasticity, microstructure, and the optical impacts of dust. A few posters talking about spatial variability at basin scale, one on the impacts of climate change in Svalbard, and 2 posters on approaches to evaluating snowpack models. Finally, the terrain dynamics and engineering theme has 6 posters. There's 2 on dynamic avalanche models, 2 posters investigating large avalanches in Spain and Italy, an international effort to automate terrain exposure maps, and an app to visualize terrain. I'd like to thank all the presenters for sharing their work today and encourage everyone to participate in the virtual discussions. We're excited to see how this new format of poster session goes, so feel free to send me comments or questions at posters@issw2020.com. With that, this is the final GoToLive webinar presentation of the day. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. We'll be back tomorrow at 6:15 a.m. Mountain Time for the next poster session, and then another round of oral presentations at 8 a.m. Thank you very much.